Avengers Endgame is the most overhyped movie of all time. That's not surprising, of course, since this is the biggest movie ever. Every MCU installment, good or bad, has been building up to this. Avengers Endgame completely falls apart when you think about it for more than 5 minutes. This movie has several glaring issues that are seemingly being ignored by critics and audiences. This video will be an in-depth critique of the entire movie, talking about what the movie got right and especially what it got wrong. Spoilers ahead, you've been warned.
Hold that. How are you? Not great, Bob.
Avengers Endgame opens up on Hawkeye's family being decimated. This scene is executed very well, as we the audience experience Hawkeye's escalating panic. It's also a nice touch that we don't directly see Hawkeye's family disappear. It all happens off screen. Very tasteful. I would ask how this scene takes place during the daytime, since the scene when the snap happened in Wakanda also during the daytime, but whatever, that's just a little nitpick. Suffice to say, this opening is an excellent tone setter for what's to come. At least that's what I thought. The next scene, we see Nebula and Tony on the Guardians ship killing time by playing football. This scene starts off lighthearted as we see some great character interactions between these two. Tony makes a dying message for Pepper, in the hopes that she'll receive it one day. Tony explains that it's been 22 days on the ship, he's light years away from Earth, and oxygen will run out by tomorrow morning. It would seem that Tony Stark is in an utterly hopeless situation. But of course, obviously Tony's going to be saved because, well, we got the rest of the movie to deal with. For what this sequence was going for, it does a great job showing us what Tony and Nebula are doing right after the events of Infinity War. Tony had even said that the trip to Titan was a one-way go. So of course it's easy to put together that he would use the Guardian ship to try to get back to Earth. You know what's not easy to put together? Is how exactly Captain Marvel was able to find Tony and Nebula. After Tony makes his recording, he takes rest knowing he'll be dead by morning. Nebula even takes the effort to make sure when Tony dies, he'll be comfortable in the captain's chair. But Tony wakes up to see that Captain Marvel is right outside the ship, all Tinkerbell-like. This of course means that Tony and Nebula are saved, but if you were like me, you're probably asking, how exactly did Captain Marvel even find them? This takes a bunch of assuming, but this scene can make sense, you just have to put some pieces together. The movie never indicates this, but I'm pretty sure Pepper Potts received Tony's recording back on Earth. It is odd how Tony says recording instead of message. This had me thinking he just hit record on a camera, but whatever the case, he sent a message. In the after-credits scene of Infinity War, Nick Fury pages Captain Marvel, implying that she'll be coming back to Earth in Endgame. In the after-credits scene of Captain Marvel, we see that exactly happen. Carol Danvers shows up at the Avengers compound with Cap and Black Widow. What we can take away from these two after-credits scenes is that Captain Marvel came to Earth, was filled in on everything by Cap and Black Widow, and then when Pepper received Tony's dying message, they were able to track the coordinates of Tony's whereabouts and then send Captain Marvel to find him. This isn't a huge stretch when you assume that this is what happened, but the movie could have thrown a quick line of dialogue to cement this theory. Because honestly, at first I thought Captain Marvel just miraculously passed by the Guardian ship when returning to Earth the first time. It was only after I looked back at the after credits scene of Captain Marvel that I saw Cap still had his beard, which helped me put the events in chronological order. But you might still be asking, well, how does she even return Tony and Nebula back to Earth within such a quick time? Well, the thing is, if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, she's able to travel at light speed in space. So this does check out. But then why does Captain Marvel later in the movie not move at light speed? I've been told the reason for this is because if Captain Marvel were to move at light speed in our atmosphere, she would ignite the whole thing. So I guess the light speed travel is literally just for space travel. Even though it's kind of weird that they would introduce that in Captain Marvel when warp jumping is also a thing in this universe, but I don't know, whatever. A very malnourished Tony catches up with the Avengers at the compound. You see some character drama between Tony and Cap, and that's all very good with an excellent performance by Robert Downey Jr. Tony asks if they know where Thanos is, and Cap says no. But literally 3 minutes later, Rocket tells everyone that they know where he's at. This is a weird contradiction in the span of 3 minutes. I mean, maybe you could assume that Rocket just didn't tell Cap, but still, that's really odd. Whatever the case, the Avengers decide that they'll find Thanos on this random planet, kick his ass, and use the stones to bring everyone back. The Avengers discover a weakened Thanos on his farm and proceed to easily overpower him. They ask where the stones are, and Thanos explains that he used the stones to destroy the stones. It seems that our heroes are out of luck, in a hopeless situation where they're not going to be able to bring everyone back. Thor then cuts Thanos' head off, and then we have a 5-year time skip. The MCU movies do a pretty decent job of showing us how everyday citizens are reacting to whatever catastrophic situation is happening. But we never really get that in this movie. Yeah, we get that scene with Hawkeye at the beginning, but I was hoping we'd get more perspectives from non-Avengers. I would have loved to see everyday people react to Thanos' snap right after it happened. I just thought that was a huge missed opportunity. I do have to wonder, does the 50% that survived even know who Thanos is? The next scene we see what is known as a Deus Ex Machina. If you're not familiar with YouTube reviewer lingo, a Deus Ex Machina is basically when a story has a roadblock and that roadblock is solved through an outside force that is basically kind of impossible to have come out of nowhere. Well, this movie has that. Out of nowhere, Remy from Ratatouille walks over the control panel connected to the quantum realm machine, and in doing so, sets Scott Lang free.
That's just lazy writing.
Like, why even do it like this? It would make a lot more sense if some like random guys like found the quantum realm machine, or maybe some scientists pick it up or something. I don't know. Anything would be better than some random rat just walking over the control panel. After this scene, we see Scott walk around a post-snap San Francisco. Scott finds his daughter, who is now 5 years older from the last time he saw her, and we get a touching moment of them reconnecting. This is a minor nitpick, but Scott's daughter looks a lot older than she should. In Ant-Man and the Wasp, she was still like 9 or 10, right? Why does she look like she's like 18 here? In the next scene, we see Black Widow at the compound in a call with War Machine, Rocket, Captain Marvel, and Oye. This is where Captain Marvel says, "What has happened on Earth is happening on other planets, so you might not see me for a while." This is literally an excuse for the writers to say, hey, this character is broken, so she won't be in the rest of the movie until we conveniently need her again. I'm not even kidding. If Captain Marvel stayed in the call for like 3 more minutes, she would have heard of Ant-Man's time heist plan and would have made this movie's runtime a lot less. Which I would have actually preferred because this movie is needlessly 3 hours long. After everyone leaves the call, War Machine mentions that Hawkeye has become, well, basically the Punisher, and is killing bad people left and right. After hearing this, Natasha starts to cry because killing bad people is bad? Okay, a big part of Black Widow's character is that she feels horrible for all the bad things she did in her past. It's never clarified exactly what she did, but it can be assumed that she probably killed a lot of innocent people. She even says that she has to remove the red from her ledger. This is why she works for S.H.I.E.L.D. so that she can be, well, a better person. But I don't really understand. What's wrong with Hawkeye killing bad people? Black Widow in Winter Soldier was killing bad people left and right with her pistols, so I don't really get why she's crying here. Is it because he's, like, really brutal about it? I don't know. I just don't really understand why Natasha feels so heartbroken about this. Cap finds a distraught Natasha and tries to cheer her up. Natasha and Cap have a nice scene together where Nat proclaims that the Avengers basically became her family. Then the two are interrupted by a message from Scott, who's at the front gate. They let Ant-Man in and he explains that he just came out of the quantum realm. He explains that he was put in the quantum realm 5 years ago, but in the quantum realm, he was only in there for 5 hours. Now, if you're someone that watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, you're probably asking, wait, then why is Hope's mom at the end of that movie so old? This is where in the movie, Scott just says, the quantum realm is unpredictable.
That's just lazy writing.
Scott suggests that maybe the quantum realm could be used as a time machine. So, to do this right, they go and find Tony. We then see Tony at a cabin house somewhere in the country, and it's revealed that Tony has a daughter. We see her with a blue Iron Man helmet, which Tony says, that's supposed to be for your mom. And immediately it becomes apparent, okay, so Gwyneth Paltrow's gonna be wearing an Iron Man suit later? Alright, cool. There's never some sort of indication that maybe Pepper over the past 5 years became like a superhero or something, but whatever, don't think about it. This little peek into Tony's life is actually a clever parallel to Thanos. I guess both of them just want to settle down in a cabin house. Cute. Scott, Nat, and Cap show up at Tony's house, and Tony refuses to help them with the time machine. So they decide that they'll try to get Bruce. Okay, we gotta talk about this scene. This is when we see a Bruce Banner and Hulk hybrid, who I'll be referring to as Bulk. Which I understand most people online are referring to him as Professor Hulk, but Bulk's gonna be quicker to say. Bulk explains that basically he accepted the Hulk and now he's able to have the best of both worlds. Bruce keeps his intelligence while still having the Hulk's strength. I found this new direction for the character to be funny for like 5 minutes, then it became kinda lame. Bruce and Hulk have been going through a very interesting character arc ever since Thor Ragnarok. The last time we saw Hulk, he fought Thanos at the beginning of Infinity War. He got his ass beat, and for the rest of the movie, he wouldn't come out. Though it was probably more of an excuse to write Hulk out for the rest of Infinity War, I did find Hulk's refusal to come out to be very interesting. And I was curious to see this be resolved in Endgame, but instead we get this.
I think it's gratuitous, but whatever.
It's just really weird. It's like the writers halfway through writing the character decided, hey, let's actually go into a completely different direction and make him more comedic. As if the movie wasn't going to be full of comedy already. A couple of kids show up to get a photo with Bulk, and I kid you not, Bulk fucking dabs.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Listen, Bruce Banner does sort of come off as like a dorky dad type, so him dabbing to make himself seem cool in front of fans, I guess that isn't far-fetched. But why would he be doing that in 2023? I know this movie's written by a bunch of old dudes, but oh my god, that was so cringy. Cap, Nat, and Scott convince Bulk to help with the time machine. In the next scene, we see Tony look at a picture of him and Spider-Man, and come to the realization that, well, he does actually want to help. Tony Stark, nonchalantly, figures out the formula for time travel in 30 seconds?
That's just lazy writing.
The most I could give this scene is that maybe it was implying that Tony was working all night. But still, for him to figure out time travel in one night, that is so broken. Tony Stark's big Sheen brain is as broken as Captain Marvel's power level. You can tell the writers themselves also thought this was kind of ridiculous, so they kind of play this scene off as a joke. When Tony figures out that he did do it, that he figured out the time travel formula, he just kind of blurts out shit, and then the daughter shows up, and then she mimics him by saying shit, and then the whole audience laughed, and then I think they all forgot that, hey, this character literally figured out time travel in 30 seconds. What is also, like, just strange about this is that Tony figuring out the formula for time travel basically makes the scenes that happen before and after kind of pointless. Okay, so you're the writer, and you're writing this story where you're going to have Cap, Nat, and Scott ask Tony if he could help with the time machine, but he refuses. So you write it to where the characters will find the next best person, which is Bruce Banner. Now that scene doesn't really matter because now Tony can just come to the compound and just explain the formula for time travel. My main point is you don't really need a scene dedicated to introducing Professor Hulk. You could have just had him showed up. And I understand that this is a Marvel movie and there's going to be jokes and comedic relief, but now the whole Scott Lang coming back as a baby, coming back as an old man joke is also just a wasted scene because, again, Tony just shows up at the compound and then tells him how to do it, how to do time travel. By this point in the movie, I'm starting to feel a little off-putted by the comedy. The beginning of the movie sets up a serious and dire tone with Hawkeye's family being decimated, but from that point on, the movie has slowly become one of the jokiest Marvel movies to date. No, seriously, am I the only one that feels like these jokes are a little inappropriate in a story where humanity just experienced the Holocaust but like times 10,000? I'm not saying you can't have jokes or moments of comedic relief in a serious movie, but seeing Bulk dab or Thor playing Fortnite is just, it's a little much. Speaking of, let's talk about Thor. Bulk and Rocket are sent out to retrieve Thor. This is where we are introduced to a fat, drunk, and depressed version of the character, wallowing in his own self-pity. At first, I loved it. I thought this was a fantastic direction to go in with this character. After everything Thor has gone through, it would only make sense for him to be like this. Yeah, seeing Fortnite was cringy and didn't really make sense considering it was 2023. I mean, oh god, I hope it's not relevant by then. I thought the movie was just going to introduce this version of the character comedically, but as the movie would go on, we would just, he would just be Thor. But Thor being fat becomes like this constant joke throughout the whole movie, and it just keeps repeating itself again and again and again. Like, yeah, this character has fallen from grace, but like, what more comedic relief do you need? Every time Thor shows up, it's just kind of funny. In the next scene, we see Hawkeye in Japan killing, I assume, a bunch of samurai. This whole sequence felt like it was straight out of an anime. Nat finds Barton and tells him they're going to undo the snap. Fast forwarding a bit, back at the compound, the Avengers test out time travel as Hawkeye volunteers to be the test subject. This is where the movie attempts to explain, well, how the time travel works. Here's exactly what Bulk says. Changing the past doesn't change the future. If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and your former present becomes the past, which can't be changed by your now future. This does get more of an explanation later when Bulk talks to the Ancient One, but basically the easiest way to explain this is that once the Avengers time travel, they're not actually time traveling to the past of their own reality. Instead, they're time traveling to the past of a duplicate reality, which already opens up a whole can of worms, but we'll go with it. This alternate reality concept presents itself with some compelling ideas, such as being able to take the dead that's alive in the alternate reality and bringing them back to the one that we're already in. I mean, of course, Endgame mostly ignores these ideas for the sake of plot convenience, but, well, we'll get back to it later. Tony clarifies to everyone that they're just going to get the stones, come back, snap everyone back to 2023, and that's it. They're not going to undo anything that happened in the past 5 years. And of course, this is because Tony doesn't want to lose his kid. After a successful test of sending Hawkeye to see his dead family, the Avengers plan out how they'll time travel to get the stones. While figuring out how to retrieve the stones, Black Widow mentions that if they go back to New York in 2012, during the first Avengers movie, they could retrieve 3 stones at once, since previous Marvel movies have conveniently set that up. Something to take note before moving forward is that the time machine in this movie doesn't just put you in the past of a duplicate reality, it also basically teleports you to, well, I assume, anywhere you want to go. I can't say for exactly sure if you can just teleport willy-nilly, since Nebula and War Machine go to Morag where the Power Stone is, but Black Widow and Hawkeye have to travel by ship to where the Soul Stone is. The Avengers time travel in 3 different groups to 3 different realities. A reality where Hulk, Tony, Cap, and Scott go back to the first Avengers movie so they can retrieve the Time, Space, and Mind Stone. Black Widow, Hawkeye, War Machine, and Nebula travel to the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy where Nebula and War Machine wait for Peter Quill to lead them to the Power Stone. The last party has Thor and Rocket going to Thor the Dark World to retrieve the Reality Stone from Natalie Portman. With the knowledge of how the time travel works and knowing this setup, we can now talk about how this movie completely falls apart. The reason the Avengers don't just constantly keep retrying to retrieve the stones is because they can only do one round trip for everyone. This is because if you want to travel back in time, you need the Pym particles. Well, the Pym particles are what Ant-Man uses to shrink and grow bigger, and that is what they use to shrink so they can go in the quantum realm and then travel to each different reality to get the stones. The movie says they only have enough to do one round trip, and they do this while showing that like one full vial of Pym particles. So I'm going to assume that you just need one full vial to be able to do this whole one round trip. The reason they can't make more Pym particles is because the guy who made them, Hank Pym, was decimated. At face value, this might seem like a completely reasonable explanation for why they're only able to do this once. But if we fast forward a bit, Cap and Tony go back further in time to the 70s after Tony fucked up trying to retrieve the Space Stone. Which, by the way, the only reason why Tony messed up trying to get it was because Hulk conveniently burst out of like a stairway door to knock the case that was holding the Space Stone out of his hand.
That's just lazy writing.
The Tesseract also conveniently fell right between Loki's feet, and he was able to pick it up and escape. So if this reality has a Loki on the run, is this going to be the plot for the Disney Plus show? Tony and Cap go back to the 70s because Tony knows that on a military base, there's the Tesseract, as well as Pym particles. But this is where you have to ask, wait, if you can just take more Pym particles from different past realities, then why do they need to go back to the 70s? I mean, Scott Lang knows the location of Hank Pym's mansion. Why not just go there in 2012 and retrieve the Pym particles in his mansion? Or at least the ones in his Ant-Man suit. This is where I realized there's no tension in this time heist because they literally have an infinite supply of the Pym particles if they just kept going back and back and found the right time to get more from Hank Pym. Now maybe you're thinking, well, Hank's mansion is in San Francisco, and they're currently in New York. That's a pretty long distance. But that's the thing, there's no rush. The movie already established that while you're in the quantum realm, time and their reality is moving at like the slowest pace possible. I see no reason why they can't take the time to go to San Francisco and at least check if there are Pym particles there. If Tony Stark can figure out time travel overnight, you think he'd be able to figure this out. I'm also pretty sure that Scott should have some Pym particles on him, since when they go back to the compound he shrinks and then later in the film he grows big. Shouldn't he have enough to spare the little extra sacrifice to get the Tesseract back? Tony and Cap go back to the 70s, and we do get somewhat of a nice scene of Tony interacting with his father, as well as Cap seeing Peggy. Hulk finds the Ancient One, asks where Doctor Strange is, and the Ancient One says, "You're 5 years too early." The Ancient One can see into the future all the way up until her death. But for some reason she denies giving Hulk the Time Stone, even though wouldn't she be able to predict this conversation and know that she's gonna give it to him anyways? After another explanation of how the time travel works in this movie, we do get the setup where Avengers need to return the stones when they're done using it, or else the realities that they take the stones from will pretty much be in shambles. This confused me at first because I thought when the Avengers time traveled, each time they did, they were ending up in a different reality each time. But I guess you can revisit the reality that you just took something from. This also brings up the question of, well, if these are all just duplicate realities, why don't the Avengers try going back in time of a different reality to when Tony makes a time machine, and then using that time machine to go back in time in their own reality? Man, they really made this movie overly complicated with the time travel bullshit, huh? Another thing that makes Cap and Tony going back to the 70s seem really dumb is, well, why couldn't they just communicate with the Hulk? Because he got the time stone, so why not just use that? Was it ever implied that the Time Stone needs the necklace to work? I mean, if that's the case, just ask the Ancient One to, hey, can you use it real quick so we can reverse the Tesseract being removed from this reality, and then we can be on our way? I mean, why not try that? If Tony and Cap just waited for Bulk to return with the Time Stone, they could have just used that to fix Tony's fuck up. Thor and Rocket time travel to a oddly specific time in Thor the Dark World where Thor's mom's still alive and Natalie Portman's on Asgard, but why not just travel to the point where the Collector got the Reality Stone at the end of the movie? That would surely be a lot safer, right? I mean, what's he gonna do, not give it to Thor, the god of thunder? Nebula and War Machine retrieve the Power Stone, but during this time, evil Nebula of this timeline is able to connect to the network that good Nebula, the one that we're with, is connected to. And that makes evil Nebula break down right in front of 2014 Thanos and basically just exposition dumps like the whole plot to him.
That's just lazy writing.
I can kind of get behind the idea of like, okay, Nebula's connected to like a network or whatever, so I guess her past self would be connected to it as well as one who comes from a different reality would connect back to it. But wouldn't Nebula know? Or why hasn't Nebula at least like, I don't know, asked Tony to, hey, can you get this like recording out of my head? It would kind of seem like a wise idea to suggest that, especially if you're going to go back in time to where Thanos is still alive. Good Nebula then breaks down right before her and War Machine were about to time jump back to their reality. But the way the scenes were set up, it kind of made it seem like evil Nebula from 2014 connected to the network had her head haywire and then show Thanos everything, but then good Nebula didn't connect to it till like a little after. It seems like if you're gonna do this, they should have done it at the same time, but alright, whatever, don't think about it. This next scene I thought at first was a huge plot hole, but, and I don't even know if the writers meant to do this intentionally, you could explain it if you put a bunch of pieces together and you just kind of do a lot of assuming. Nebula regains consciousness after her head haywires and then runs to the ship to warn Black Widow and Hawkeye that Thanos knows of the plan. Now you're probably asking, why does she do that? As the movie already established, when you go back in time to a different reality, anything you do there won't affect your own. So why is it that when Nebula regains her consciousness, she doesn't just immediately time travel back? Well, here's my explanation for that. And like I said, I have no idea if the writers even set this up intentionally. Nebula knows that Gamora knows where the Soul Stone is. She also knows that Thanos can access her recordings through Evil Nebula, which is how Thanos discovers where the Soul Stone is in Infinity War. The reason Nebula goes back to the ship to warn Hawkeye and Black Widow is because she's worried that Thanos could find them. This is why Nebula doesn't time travel back, because she doesn't know if Hawkeye and Black Widow have already retrieved the stone. That's my only explanation to maybe forgive this scene. If this wasn't the interpretation that the writers wanted me to take away from this, then this was a huge fucking plot hole. Tony and Cap retrieve the Tesseract and more Pym particles so they can return back to their time. Thor gets a pep talk from his mom as well as retrieving Mjolnir. The only ones that haven't retrieved their stones yet are Hawkeye and Black Widow, because they're trying to decide who's going to be the sacrifice. What's weird about this scene is that once they get to the location of the Soul Stone, Red Skull tells them that you need to, have a sacrifice, as we know from Infinity War. At first they assume that maybe he's lying, but shouldn't they know this? Nebula knows that you have to have a sacrifice to get the Soul Stone. Why doesn't Nebula warn them before they time travel? Maybe they could have planned this out better. This is definitely a plot hole, and I've actually gotten a lot of arguments on this one. A lot of people have told me, well, Nebula doesn't actually know if you have to sacrifice someone. No, she totally does. In this movie specifically, she tells Gamora, do you know what Thanos does to you? Do you want to know how he gets the Soul Stone? It's like 95% implied that she knows what's going on with the Soul Stone. So for her to not warn Hawkeye and Black Widow is just, well, to be frank, it's a dick move. After some back and forth fighting, Black Widow sacrifices herself in a death scene that I felt had really no impact for me. Because, well, even YMS kind of bring this up on how it's hard to convey to the audience that, oh, is Black Widow like actually dead? Because we see Gamora from 2014, and you can pretty much assume like, okay, so that's how Gamora's going to return back to the Guardians, that they're going to take a Gamora from a different reality. And this is where you think, okay, well, Black Widow won't actually die, they'll just probably get another Black Widow from a different reality or something. But no, later in the film, they literally say, Black Widow's gone. And that was when I realized, we're just going to ignore that you could do that? Okay, cool. Hawkeye gets the Soul Stone, and all the Avengers return back to the compound, except for our Nebula, because Thanos has switched her out with Evil Nebula. The Avengers have all the Infinity Stones, and so now they need to just use them to snap everyone back. And Tony just makes a gauntlet out of nanotech? Peter Dinklage's character back in Infinity War said he made Thanos' gauntlet with the power to wield the stones. I thought it was kind of implied that if you wanted to hold the power of the stones, you would need like a very powerful object full of like, space magic to be able to even harness the power. I guess Stark Tech can handle the power of the Infinity Stones?
That's just lazy writing.
After Tony puts the stones on his nanotech gauntlet, the Avengers debate on who is going to wear it so that they can bring everyone back. Of course, if a regular person wields the power of the stones, they'll probably die. So the only reasonable candidate is Thor. So Bulk wields the gauntlet and snaps his fingers, and this completely took me out of the movie. Not because of Bulk using the gauntlet, but how he used the gauntlet. When we first see Tony make his gauntlet, it was the size of a regular man's hand, which led me to believe that Thor was going to wield it. He's the god of thunder. He's probably the only one that could survive the power as well as have it fit in his hand. But then Bulk says he's going to do it, and I was thinking, what the fuck you mean you're going to do it? That thing's not going to fit your hand. And then we see Bulk put his hand towards the gauntlet, and the nanotech just swarm around his hand so that it can fit. And I was just like, oh, that's how Thanos is going to be able to wear it later, isn't he? When I first saw this scene, I thought maybe the reason they didn't give it to Thor was because they thought he wasn't in the right mindset. But I watched it again, and Bulk literally says that only he can wield the power of the stones. What do you mean? Yeah, he got fat, but he's still the god of thunder. He should be able to wield the power of the stones. He's literally a god, and you're just a
Buffer.
Shrek. What the fuck do you mean that he can't wield it? Why did Tony Stark make a gauntlet that was a one-size-fit-all? I don't understand critics and audiences who are at this point in the movie, and they're thinking to themselves, yeah, this movie's flawless. It's a masterpiece. Like, dude, these last 2 hours have been just a fucking mess. Bulk snaps his fingers and all life comes back. Also, does it have to be a snap? Actually, let's talk about that real quick. In Infinity War, the rules around the gauntlet are that you have to close your fist to use the stones. But Why? This was an issue I had with Infinity War that I was hoping would be addressed here. Why do you have to close your fist? Or even snap your fingers to use the stones? Why can't you just think about it? This wasn't an aspect that ruined Infinity War, and it's not even really a problem here. I just always wondered why. While Bulk snapped his fingers, Evil Nebula goes up to the time machine and brings Thanos and his moon-sized ship filled with thousands of alien monsters to 2023. What the fuck? How did she do that? There was a scene where Evil Nebula gave Thanos a vial of the Pym particles, but she still returned with the Avengers. So doesn't that mean that she used that vial? How did she teleport Thanos' ship here? Are we to assume that Thanos got the vial and was able to make a bunch of copies or something? And still, how would that even make sense? How is Thanos' whole moon-sized ship able to travel through the quantum realm? Or maybe the movie's implying that Nebula could just hack the time machine with her fingers? Well, if that's the case, then why doesn't good Nebula try doing this? Would save him a bunch of Pym particles. When Thanos' ship blasts above the compound, why doesn't Friday warn Tony that there's something in the atmosphere? Later we see Friday able to detect Captain Marvel coming into the atmosphere, but not Thanos' big fucking ship? Thanos uses his ship to blast the compound, and miraculously, nobody dies. Like, nobody, not even a broken arm. Well, we're almost near the end of the movie, and from this point forward, the movie becomes a lot more enjoyable. The climax is the same climax we've seen at the end of every single Avengers movie. The Avengers fight a faceless alien army, and we cheer when they do cool stuff. Fine, I'm cool with it. I can just turn my brain off and enjoy the action. But unfortunately, there actually are still some problems I need to address. After Cap, Thor, and Tony fight Thanos and get their ass handed to them, and we see a really cool scene of Captain America William Mjolnir, it would seem that all hope is lost. Thanos overpowers Captain America. He's even able to tear off bits and pieces of Captain America's shield. We then see Captain America alone by himself, facing an army that will definitely kill him. I mean, the army kind of just comes out of nowhere, but again, whatever, don't think about it. But then Captain America hears Sam on his intercom saying on his left. This is where we get a really fantastic scene of all the Avengers coming out of Doctor Strange's portals. And Captain America says, "Avengers assemble," and admittedly it was pretty fucking badass. But again, like I said, there are some issues I need to address. How does Doctor Strange teleport from Titan to Earth?
Stark.
Yeah.
Can you get us home?
Yeah, I heard you.
Thinking I'm not so sure we should. Under no circumstances can we bring the time stone to Thanos.
Then teleport, you idiot.
Tony mentioned back in Infinity War that them going to Titan is likely a one-way trip, but Doctor Strange never reassures him that, hey, when we're done fighting, I'll be able to just teleport us back to Earth. Maybe this is something Doctor Strange could have done before he, got dusted. Could have gave Tony a little portal that he could have jumped through, so Nebula and Tony didn't have to almost die on the Guardian ship. At first I thought maybe the reason Doctor Strange doesn't do this is because, well, I was under the assumption that maybe the sling ring could only work within Earth? I don't know, maybe there's an explanation from Doctor Strange that I missed. Let me know in the comments. So all the Avengers are here to fight Thanos, but it does feel pretty hollow, because this Thanos has no history with any of these characters. He's basically fighting strangers. And I don't know if this is because Thanos is 4 years younger than when he was in Infinity War, but he comes off as way more of a cliche. In Infinity War, he never killed if he didn't need to. Thanos' whole motivation is basically the dangers of someone who thinks they're right. Thanos, in his own sick little way, really does think he's helping everyone. So when in this movie, Thanos out of nowhere is like, I've learned that I won't be able to just wipe away half the universe. I'm gonna just strip every atom of this universe and then make a new one. It's just kind of like, oh, okay. Seems kind of counterintuitive to your character in Infinity War. Like, yeah, you're a younger version of yourself, but you can't be that arrogant, can you? Thanos just seemed a lot more underwritten in this movie, and that's a huge shame because I really loved him in Infinity War. After we see a bunch of punches, Hawkeye shows up with a gauntlet, for some reason. The next sequence, its whole purpose is just to have the gauntlet be tossed around from each character to character, kind of like a football, and so that we can just kind of have it travel around the battlefield until they can get it to Ant-Man's Quantum Realm time machine that's just kind of randomly in the battlefield for some reason. I get the setup for this sequence, but it doesn't really make any sense. First, why didn't Hawkeye just maybe hide the gauntlet? Or better yet, Hawkeye could have just ran it to Doctor Strange. He could have made one of his sling ring portals and then just put the gauntlet through there. Then we wouldn't have to worry about Thanos using it. There's a moment during the fight where Thanos' big ship is blasting the ground with hellfire, but then it starts targeting the sky, and then lo and behold, Captain Marvel shows up and takes out the ship in one fell swoop. Just like that. Wow, I'm so invested in this Deus Ex Machina. After Captain Marvel conveniently shows up out of nowhere, she flies down to Peter Parker and takes the gauntlet from him. We then see every female Avenger show up in a scene of obvious girl empowerment. Alright, listen, I'm all for representation. Overwatch is a game that made me realize how cool representation can be. But this scene is, I have to say, is pretty pandering. The thing is though, if you want to have a girl empowerment scene, maybe just don't sacrifice logic to get it. I mean, Infinity War had a girl power moment, and I don't remember anyone complaining about that scene. Captain Marvel now has the gauntlet and tries flying to the time machine, but wait. How does Captain Marvel know what to do? She just sort of showed up. I mean, yeah, Cap tells her that, hey, they need an assist. So I don't know, I guess we're supposed to assume that he conveyed everything that's going on to her. But still, what is she supposed to accomplish? She doesn't have the time travel suit, Pym particles, or even the GPS watch. So she's not going to be able to return the stones because she can't even go through the quantum realm. If I remember correctly, I think Captain Marvel threw the gauntlet at the quantum realm. What was that supposed to accomplish? If you did that, wouldn't that make it possible for you to kind of just lose the gauntlet forever? I mean, it's the quantum realm after all. It's a pretty big place. Why doesn't Captain Marvel just fly up to space so Thanos can't retrieve the gauntlet? Why doesn't someone tell Captain Marvel that she's one of the most powerful beings in the universe and that she should put on the glove to maybe wish away this mess? Why is Captain Marvel going a lot slower in trying to fly the gauntlet to the time machine than she was when taking out Thanos' ship? Thanos then throws his sword at the time machine and breaks it. Thanos is able to get a hold of the gauntlet and punches Captain Marvel with the Power Stone, which, if the movie was consistent with the power level of everyone, she would probably be dead. I love how Doctor Strange tells Tony that he can't tell him the future or else it won't happen, but like 5 minutes later he does anyways. Doctor Strange gestures at Tony that this is it. This is the one reality where they win. And of course, Tony realizes what he has to do. Tony stops Thanos from snapping and is able to transfer all 6 stones to his Iron Man hand. When Bulk put the gauntlet on, he was struggling pretty hard to just even put his fingers together to snap. But Tony Stark, an average human being, just wields the power of the Infinity Stones. No problem. I mean, yeah, Tony dies in the process, but still, for him to just do this so kind of nonchalantly is just going against the logic that the film presented earlier. Tony snaps his fingers and all of Thanos' army is completely dusted. Thanos sits down and realizes that he's lost, as we see him also get dusted. After using the immense power of the Infinity Stones, Tony Stark proceeds to die, in a pretty effective emotional scene. In the next scene, we see all of our heroes at Tony Stark's funeral, mourning his death. Weirdly enough, we don't get a funeral for Vision or Black Widow. I don't know, I guess they weren't as important as Tony Stark, I guess. Fast forward to the last few scenes, we see Captain America time travel back to each timeline to return all the stones as well as Thor's hammer. We don't specifically see Cap return each and every stone, we're just waiting for him to return back to the platform of the time machine. Would have been cool to see Cap reunite with Red Skull, but not a huge deal. After Bulk counts the 10 seconds, Captain America doesn't return. Bulk and Falcon assume that maybe something went horribly wrong, but then Bucky tells Sam to look over to a bench, where there's an old man. This of course turns out to be Captain America. Sam walks over to Old Man Cap, and Cap explains that after he returned the stones, he decided to live his life with the one he loved. As soon as time travel became the plot of this movie, it becomes kind of obvious that this is probably where the Russos were going to end Captain America's arc. I mean, is there anything else less perfect than Cap getting his date? Now, even though that time travel was introduced, I actually didn't expect him to live his whole life with Peggy, since from Winter Soldier we know that she does find someone to spend her life with. But now we gotta talk about how Captain America is even still in this timeline. This is either a major plot hole or something a lot more worse. I already explained earlier that when the Avengers time travel, they're traveling to a duplicate reality, not to the actual past of their own. So you should be asking, wait, then how is Cap on the bench in this scene? Shouldn't he be in a different reality? Now, like I said, this is either a huge plot hole, or my more favorable interpretation is that we've been living in an MCU where there's been 2 Captain Americas the whole time. If you interpret the plot this way, this wouldn't break the time travel logic either. When Cap time traveled to return the stones, he left and stayed in that reality, and the Cap that we see on the bench isn't the Cap that we followed through the MCU. Old Man Cap is from a different reality that time traveled to ours. This checks out with the time travel logic of the movie, but it would mean that Peggy lied about marrying some other guy, and I guess just kind of kept it a secret from our Captain America. I mean, there's also a Peggy Carter show that probably makes this even a lot harder to work. But the worst thing, the absolute worst thing, is that Captain America lived from the 40s to 2023 and didn't try preventing any of the catastrophic disasters that happened on Earth. So what this basically means, guys, Captain America let 9/11 happen. That subplot of Cap making out with Peggy's niece in Civil War is now way more weird than it was before. It's also really weird that we don't see a scene of Cap maybe asking Bucky if he wants to come back with him. I mean, you could interpret the scene that Bucky knew that Cap was going to go back in time and maybe Bucky just wanted to stay. But still, we should see him say, nah, there's nothing for me to go back to, I'm going to stay here. I'm also not entirely sure how Cap is even old in this scene, since I thought the super soldier serum prevented him from aging. So that's basically the end of the movie. We see Cap dance with Peggy at the very end, and we have some 40s music play off into the credits. But we gotta talk about some stuff still. Everyone that died 5 years ago was brought back to the current day. There's going to have to be some major repercussions for this. Peter's going to return to high school and Far From Home, and half of his class should be graduated. Unless Marvel from here on out just ignores that major plot point, which honestly, they probably will. From this point forward, time machines are in this universe, so really, you could bring back anyone that died if you really wanted to. Any future school shooting, any future terrorist attack. When those happen in future Marvel movies, and the heroes don't try to prevent it through time travel, I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that they don't try to prevent it when they totally can. Everyone around the world is loving this movie. A lot of them are calling it a masterpiece. A lot of them saying they were emotionally invested, cried, and felt completely satisfied. I wish I could feel that. If you love this movie, great. I really do wish I could be you, but I can't. When I watch films, I watch them critically, and when I see these major problems, they take me out of the movie, and I wanted to make this video to showcase all the ones I found in Endgame. I said this in my MCU retrospective video, but I think I'm done. I'm done with superhero movies. I'm tired and fatigued. Maybe the direction Warner Brothers is taking with their superhero properties will be worth checking out, but only time will tell. If I were to rank Endgame with all the other MCU movies, this is where I would probably put it. I really do hope superhero movies start dying out. I know that's a pretty drastic statement to say, but you know, Disney bought 20th Century Fox and everyone was so happy because they were like, oh great, now the Hulk can fight Wolverine in a future MCU movie. But I don't think enough people realize that Disney has pretty much monopolized Hollywood. When Disney bought 20th Century Fox, I think it was like 30,000 people lost their jobs or something. Like, yeah, cool, we get to see Wolverine fight Hulk in a future movie, but you know, some people's lives might be completely ruined from this. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one tired, and everyone else is just excited for this to go on, assumedly forever. We'll get a Phase 4, we'll get a Phase 5, and it'll keep going. We'll keep getting Star Wars movies, we'll keep getting live-action remakes of classic Disney cartoons, and I can only hope that when people start going to the cinemas from now on, they might start thinking to themselves, you know, do I really want to see the 4th reboot of Spider-Man? Do I really want to see Avengers 5? I mean, I can only hope. Marvel has made a kick-ass formula. Endgame has made over $2 billion. There's no reason for them to stop. Well, that was my video on Endgame. It was a pretty long critique. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I'm not alone here, but let me know in the comments. Do you guys want more superhero movies after this? Are you guys still invested in the MCU, or do you think we should just kind of slowly back away from this genre? Well, whatever the case, if you did like this video, it would really help me out if you could give it a like, maybe subscribe if you want to see more stuff. And if you want to help support me, I have a Patreon where you can watch videos 2 days in advance before they're put out on YouTube. I promise I will work on a video that's about like an anime or a video game, because I've been kind of exclusively talking about film for like the past 2 months. That just kind of happened because I made a format of like watching new movies and then making quick minute like reviews for them. But yeah, I promise I'm going to start talking about some other stuff, not just film. I've been Zap from Zap Arts. I'll see you guys in the next one.